back to my channel. My name is Alice. I go by Hello Alice here on YouTube and I make art videos. And today I'm bringing you guys a super easy tutorial. It's going to show you how to make some really cool digital collage artwork. And there are no drawing skills required, no tablet required. All you need is Photoshop and some stock images and you're going to be able to create something really cool today. So to do this, I'm going to be partnering up with Graphic Stock and taking part in their Creator to Creator initiative, which promotes creators teaching other creators. So that's you guys. Those of you who followed me for a while, you know I only give my honest opinion and I will only promote brands I actually use and really like. So I actually partnered with Graphic Stock about a year ago on a different campaign and I have honestly used the website so much since then. I go to it all the time for references and textures. It's just really easy to navigate. It's really convenient. I'm just logged in and I can just download stuff. I actually used them just a few weeks ago to get a reference image for that digital painting, the Rose Queen, that I did. So this is a sponsored video, but believe me when I tell you this is a service that I have used regularly throughout the past year, and I actually think it's a really great service, so I wouldn't be telling you guys about it if I didn't like it. So if you want to learn how to create your own digital collage just like the one that I showed you guys, then just keep watching. Okay, so I'm going to start by going to graphicstock.com and I'm going to start browsing around for some stock images that really spark my interest and inspire me. I'm going to be looking for things that I can combine together in an interesting way, as well as some basic background elements and textures. There is a search button right on the front of the page, so I can use that, or I can just look at vectors, illustrations, photos, and collections, and then I can narrow it down even more. Since I'm just looking for inspiration, I'm going to click on the photos section and see what I can find. I really like these flowers. Instead of downloading them right away, I'm actually going to add them to a project folder by clicking on Folder, New Folder, and typing in the name of my project. It's important to keep organized, and this will help me keep my files straight later. I'll keep searching for stock in the meantime. So I think I've found some good images, textures, and patterns that I think could work nicely together. If I go to my user icon and select project folders, I can see all of the images that I've downloaded into this project folder. Then I can delete images, or I can download them, depending on what I want. I'm going to go ahead and download my final images, and then we're going to open up Photoshop and start working on our artwork. Now let's open up Photoshop and start figuring out the general composition of our image. I'm going to create a new document at 8.5 inches by 11 inches and 300 pixels per inch, or DPI. The document type is just US paper if you just want to use the preset. I'm doing this so that it's going to print out really nicely if I do ever want to make prints of this. Then I'm going to open up all of my stock images and I'm going to start figuring out the composition of my image. So I actually think I want my image to be landscape, so I'm going to rotate my document. I'm going to do this by going to Image, Image Rotation, 90° clockwise. This is going to give me landscape. So right now I'm not worried about things looking super neat or pretty. We're actually going to replace all of these images later with final neat cutout versions. But for now I just want an idea of where things are going to go. So I'm going to go ahead and start bringing in some of the elements of my piece. So I know that I'm going to be using this image. I'm going to select it by hitting Ctrl-A, and then I'm going to hit Ctrl-C to copy. I'm going over into my original document and I'm going to hit Ctrl-V to paste, then Ctrl-T to select the transform. As you can see, there's a bounding box around it, and if I hover over the corner, the handle turns into little arrows. I'm going to hold Shift and Alt while I drag these arrows in. This is going to resize it evenly, and it's also going to resize it from the center. When I'm finished, I'll let go, and I can click and drag it to about where I want it to be. Now, I'm only going to want the girl from this, so I'm going to cut her out. We're going to cut her out really loosely. As I said, I'm not worried about things looking neat and pretty right now. This is just to get an idea of where things are going to go. So I'm going to be using the polygonal lasso tool. To get that, you want to go up here to your toolbar and click and hold over the lasso tool, and then drag down and select polygonal lasso tool. This means I can just hit a point, reach, and then click a next point, and a straight line will be formed between each of the points that I click. So I can just loosely and roughly click all the way around her body. Once I have my whole girl selected, I'm going to hit Ctrl-Shift-I. this is going to invert the selection. So now instead of selecting her, it's selecting the background. I can just hit delete on my keyboard and the background is gone. Now I can place her roughly where I want her in the image. I'm going to do this with all of my stock until I've created the overall composition that I want, and I can kind of see how the image is going to work. I'm also going to save at this point. You don't want to lose anything, so it's really important to save pretty early on. Another way that you can select and delete the background is by using the Magic Wand tool. This is a really quick and easy way to select and delete clean colored backgrounds. For example, in this lamp the background is pure white, so I can easily select it and it just selects the white pixels. If I hold Shift and click another section, then I can select multiple things at once. And then I just hit delete. The Magic Wand tool also has something called tolerance. The higher the tolerance, the more likely it is to select pixels that are similar to it. For example, if I set my tolerance to 65 and I select the white, then it's actually going to select inside the glass because the glass is a really similar color to the white. So I want a lower tolerance for this area, perhaps 15. By setting it at 15, it only selects the pure white pixels. After you select and then delete something, just press Ctrl D. This will get rid of your selection. I think I want to create a circle in this image. In order to do this, I'm going to go over to the Marquee Tool and I'm going to choose the elliptical Marquee Tool. I'm going to hold Shift and then I'm going to click and drag while holding Shift. This is going to create a perfect circle. Once the circle is about the size that I want it, I'm going to let go. I'm going to create a new layer, I probably should have done that before, and I'm going to fill the circle in with any color. Then I'm going to press Ctrl D to deselect, and I have my circle. For this circle, I want to add a texture on top of it. So I'm going to go to my texture that I want, select the texture, copy it, and paste it above the circle. And then I'm going to create what's called a clipping mask. I'm going to right click on the layer with the pattern and I'm going to click Create Clipping Mask. Now this layer on the top is going to clip exactly to the layer below it. When working with textures, something that can be helpful is to use blending layers. Blending layers are going to be over here in this drop-down box. Paste the texture that you want over the top of the layer. I've put it over the top of my circle layer. Then go down the blending modes and see which one you like best. As you can see, they all do different things, and they frequently allow the bottom layer to show through. I tend to like multiply, soft light, overlay, and lighten. Those are the ones that I tend to use the most, but play around with them. Use whichever one feels the best to you. This is also a great time to familiarize yourself with the tools of Photoshop. Unfortunately, there's no way that I could cover all of the different tools that Photoshop has to offer in just one tutorial, especially not if I want it to be a reasonable length. But there's loads of different tutorials out there, and just play around with the image adjustments. There's tons of things you can do in there, such as adjust the hue and color, the contrast, the exposure, and all of that good stuff. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with the overall composition of this image. It's not perfect, but this is just to give me a rough idea of what to go on. I haven't really worried too much about the colors or anything like that. This is just so that I know where the images are going to be placed. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to select all of the layers that I just put in here. So I'm going to start at the layer above the background, go right up to the top. I'm going to hold down Shift, and that will select all of them. Then I'm going to press Ctrl E. That's going to merge it all into one layer. I'm going to double click on the name and I'm going to rename this Comp Reference. That way I can have that reference there. I can turn it on and off by clicking this little eyeball next to it, and I can just keep an eye on it to make sure that everything is looking the way that it should. Now it's time to actually start creating your image. So I've hidden my comp reference and I know that I need the background in, so I'm going to go ahead and bring that piece of paper in because that's pretty easy. So I've brought in that background image. I'm going to rename the layer Background, and we're going to work from here. Everything's going to have a new layer, so I'm going to create a new layer and I'm going to name it Circle, and I'm going to recreate that circle. Then I'm actually going to merge both of these layers, rename it circle again, and I'm going to add that texture back on top just the same way that I did in the composition. And then I actually want to change some of the colors of this texture before I change the blending mode. So I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation, and I'm going to play around with that until I get some colors that I like. I'm also going to change the contrast by using the Curves function. Once I'm happy with the texture, then I can go ahead and change the blending mode. I'm really liking the way this is looking. The last step in my background is going to be bringing in my mountains. So I'm going to go over to my mountains image, which is right here, and I'm going to cut it out before I bring it in to the main image. Now, there's a couple different ways that you can cut out an image. You can, like I said before, use the magic wand tool. This is probably what I'm going to use for this specific image because there's so many finicky little details and I just don't have the patience to do it manually. But there is a manual way, and I'm going to show you how to do that when we deal with our main character. Now, I want this to blend into the background. So the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to drag this layer underneath my background layer. Then I'm going to take my background layer and I'm going to change the blending mode to multiply. Now you can see my trees have this paper texture on top of it, and the whole image looks more unified. This is looking pretty good so far, but there's a couple little things that I want to do. The first thing I want to do is I want to add a little bit of a shadow to the circle. This is going to make it seem like the circle is hovering above the rest of the paper. To do this, I'm going to duplicate the circle layer. You can either press Ctrl J or you can right click and go to Duplicate Layer. This is going to break my clipping mask for the texture, so I just need to fix that. And I'm going to drag my circle copy down underneath the circle and I'm going to rename it Shadow. Then I'm going to lock it. I'm going to choose a dark purple color and I'm going to press Alt Backspace. This is going to fill in the whole circle. I'm going to unlock the layer, press Ctrl T, and then I'm going to nudge that layer out to the side a little bit. So it's kind of like a drop shadow. Then I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and I'm going to adjust that until I'm happy with it. The last thing that I want to do is I want to select Multiply and lower the opacity until I think it looks good. Now the last issue is that the trees are underneath my circle. In my preview image, they're over the circle. However, if I take my circle and I drag it underneath the trees, then you're going to get that background texture on top of the circle. That's not what we want. However, there's a really easy solution to this. I'm going to hover over the trees layer and I'm going to press Control. When I go over the layer thumbnail, you can see that my mouse changes. I'm going to click and it's going to select all of that layer. Then I can go and I can delete on both my shadow and my circle layers. Now that is cut out from my circle and we're ready to move on to the main character. I'm going to open my main character and we're going to be adding a really cool digitally painted effect. Before I walk you guys through this, I have to let you know that I did not come up with this technique. I actually found it on a really great blog named Spoon Graphics, and I'm going to leave a link to the tutorial down below. This is going to be really helpful if you can't follow my words. It's a really great tutorial and it gives you such a cool result. So I find this technique works best on medium-sized images. You don't want it to be too large or else when you make it smaller, it just looks like a photograph. But if it's too small, you lose out a lot of important details. We're going to be working on this in the character file itself before we bring it over to the collage. So I'm going to take this layer and I'm going to duplicate it. Then I'm going to resize the whole image. I'm going to resize this by about 50%. That should make it about the right size. I'm going to start by duplicating this background image just a couple more times using the Command J. You can never duplicate it too many times. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a high pass effect. This is going to sharpen it. We're going to go to Filter, Other, High Pass. You want the radius to be pretty low, just enough so that the details start emerging. It looks like 1 pixel is pretty much perfect for my image. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Then we're going to go into the blending mode and we're going to choose Linear Light. Whoa! Everything just got really sharp. That's pretty cool. Then I'm going to merge this layer with the layer below it by pressing Ctrl E, and then I'm going to go to Filter, Stylize, Diffuse. You want to make sure that you're set on anisotropic. I don't really know how to pronounce that, but this is what's going to give you this really cool painterly effect. The issue with this, however, is that it does give you some seaming, as you can see when we zoom in right here. The best way to avoid this is by going Image, Image Rotation, 90-degree counterclockwise, and then repeating the filter by pressing Ctrl F. I'm going to do this for an entire rotation until I reach my beginning position. We're back at the beginning, and as you can see, the image is starting to look a lot more digitally painted if we compare it to the photo before. Things are looking pretty soft, however, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to sharpen this up by going to Filter, Sharpen, Smart Sharpen. I'm going to set my amount to 100% and my radius to 1 pixel. That should be enough. The last thing that we're going to do to create this digital painted effect is we're going to use a surface blur to kind of blur out some of the flat surfaces and give us more contrast. We're going to go to Filter, Blur, Surface Blur. Then you want to play around with the settings. You don't want it to blur out all of your nice details, but you do want it to blur out the large flat areas. I'm pretty happy with that. I think this is looking really cool. Now I need to cut her out from the background because I'm only having her, I'm not having the background. This is where we're going to cut things out using a more precise tool. We're going to be using the pen tool. Over here is the pen tool. It looks like a pen. Click on it. This is how the pen tool works. You click and make a point, and then you click and make another point. While you're still holding down your mouse key, you can click and drag to create a curve. Once you let go, you can hold down the Alt key and then click on the ends of these handles, and you can drag around your curve even more. We're going to use the pen tool to go all the way around her body. So once you have everything selected, you want to go ahead and right click and click Make Selection and hit OK. And that's going to turn your pen tool into a selection. We're going to go ahead and press Ctrl-Shift-I, delete the background, hide the layers below it, and you have your image cut out and ready to go into your main collage. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring in all of my other images. Alright, so I have pretty much everything in my composition, and I can compare it to my original reference, and I'm feeling pretty good about everything so far. Now the last thing that I want to do is I really want to work with the colors of this a little bit, because right now I think the lantern is standing out too much, and the same with the teacup, and I think the background could be desaturated a little bit as well. I just want things to kind of blur together a little bit more. So I'm going to use a lot of different techniques for this, but I'm going to show you just a couple basic ones that you can use however you would like. The first is by creating a blending mode layer over the top of a previous layer. So I'm going to do this with the background. I'm going to create a gradient layer. So I'm going to go over to my paint bucket tool. I'm going to select the gradient tool. I'm going to change the colors on each end to the colors that I want. And then on a new layer, which I'm going to call gradient, I'm going to drag a line upwards, and that's going to create my gradient. Now I can go ahead and change the blending mode until it's something that I'm happy with. I'm also going to get rid of the trees from this because I don't want the trees to be affected by the gradient. Another way that I can change things is by using the adjustments. I can use adjustment hue saturation, color balance, curves, levels, and brightness contrast, all to change things up. I'm going to let you guys play around with what works best for you, but I'm going to go ahead and use these filters to adjust the lantern and the teacup. I'm also going to select the area inside the lantern. I'm going to take my eraser brush and I'm going to set it to a fluffy brush with a high size and a low opacity. And I'm just going to slightly get rid of some of the center so that it just looks a little bit more transparent. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how this image is looking. The last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a couple new layers on top, and I'm just going to play around with blending modes and textures over the entire piece and see if I can find something that I like. I decided to add a couple layers of this torn texture just because I liked how it kind of flattened the image in certain areas, and I liked the overall effect and texture that it gave. So that's it! You're pretty much done. Make sure to save your image, and now you can show off your awesome new digital collage wherever you want. You made it entirely by yourself. Okay, so that is it for this tutorial. I do hope that it was helpful for you. If you guys do want to follow along with the tutorial, you can actually get a free 7-day subscription to Graphic.Stock, and you're going to have access to over 350,000 photos, vectors, illustrations, all of that good stuff. The link is going to be down in the description box below, so if you do want to try this out, it's a great way to do it. You can just do the 7-day trial and you get access to all of these different images that you can use in your artwork. And if you do follow along and create something, I would love to see it. Go ahead and share it on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Use the hashtag creator2creator. Tag me in it. I would love to see what you guys come up with. So yeah, that is pretty much it for this video. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It really does help me out with the YouTube algorithms. Comment down below what you thought of it. If you like me enough to want to subscribe, hi, that would be awesome. Come join the Wonderland fam. We make art and we eat a lot of pizza, so it's a good time. I do upload every Friday, so I will see you guys next Friday. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Bye guys!